I'm Arlene Herson, and I'm glad you could join me because we are going to meet one of the great actors of our time, a man who can convince you that he can be anybody that he wants to be. He has starred in so many movies and plays that it would take the whole half hour just to list them all. On stage, you have seen him play gangsters, bandits, an Oriental warlord, lawyers, generals, priests, rabbis, Napoleon, and even Ben Franklin. In real life, he's an award-winning actor and major movie star. One of his hit movies was called The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. But in real life, he's a real good guy. He's been married for over 40 years to actress Ann Jackson. He's not only successful in his professional life, obviously in his lifestyle. My guest is Eli Wallach. We're here in his apartment in New York, and we'll meet him right after these messages. I'm Arlene Herson, and my guest is Eli Wallach, and we're here in New York City in his apartment, and I thank you for your hospitality and having us here.
Thank you.
Actually, you know, here we are in New York City, a born and bred New Yorker, born in Brooklyn, I understand?
Yes.
Yeah, okay, but travel a lot, because you do so many of your films all over the world.
Well, it used to be join the Navy and see the world. Now it's join the movies. I've made movies in Canada, Crete, Cambodia, Spain, Italy, France, Germany, England, Mexico, all over.
You know, it's incredible. In doing research on you, I mean, I have pages and pages and pages and pages full of movies that you've done. You've been very busy, but when you started out, I understand you you kind of were snobbish about doing movies. You felt plays is where it was at.
Yes, well, I had the typical Broadway actor's attitude about movies. I said, oh, it's easy, and what do you want to do that for? It's artificial. Until I started acting in movies and realized how difficult it is. Because movies are like pointillism. You put dots on a canvas, and you don't see your performance till you step back from it. Whereas on the stage, each night you go into the theater, and you find new pieces, and it deepens and enriches the performance the more you play it. So that's, for the actor, it's much more gratifying to be on the stage. But the movies are, people know you. I'll be on a bus in Tokyo and they'll say, oh, you see. Whereas if you do plays, it's much more limited.
Very true. Movies really is what, I mean, goes all across, and it can be played over and over and over again.
Yeah. Because
I saw your first movie, and if it wasn't for movies, I couldn't have done that. I rented a video over the weekend, Baby Doll.
Oh, that's a good movie.
Okay, now that's Eli Wallach. You were young, and you were sexy, and you were handsome. I
noticed, Arlene, you use the whole past tense in describing it. I once took a young lady in Paris to see that movie, and I sat with Anne, me, and this young lady who was a beautiful model, and I came on the screen, and she said, who's that? I said, it's me. Oh, she said, I didn't recognize you. And it is odd seeing yourself 30 years ago, because inside of each of us is encapsulated and boxed in is a child who says, the more the exterior grows older, the inside says, no, I refuse, I'm not going to give up, I'm going to stay young. And I think acting tends to have that effect on people. All the art forms, the older people seem to relish being older, but they're still at heart young. I mean, you got Rubinstein, Picasso, Stokowski, all the old Einstein, all these old people inside were still young. Picasso said a wonderful thing. He stood in his studio and they interviewed him and said, do you paint every day? He was 90. He said, yes, every day. And they said, well, what do you do? He said, I go in the room and I stand in front of the canvas and I paint. They said, on your feet all day? He said, yes. They said, don't you get tired? No, he said, I leave my body outside. And that's what actors try to do.
Well, you know, when you say you leave it, but you can pretend to be anybody you want to be. And therefore, if you pretend that you're somebody young and you feel young, to me you look young, and you're still as sexy and handsome.
I once played a 94-year-old man. You had to be in your 30s to play that because it was so active, you know.
Well, you know, actually, when you say that, in the very beginning, when you were in Brooklyn and you were playing at the Boys Club, wasn't your first role a man, an old man in his 60s or whatever? In those times, now that's young.
But when I was a kid, my bed was always the Sahara Desert, and I was always crawling through the sand in the Foreign Legion, and I'd always get shot, and my arm was bleeding, and your imagination is very, very fertile when you're young. And I'd do that, my mother'd say, it's time to eat, and I'd say, look, Mom, I'm bleeding. She'd say, come and eat, come and eat. So those games I played, now I get paid for it.
Okay, so you were doing it way back then. I mean, you knew because your family, your mother wanted you to be a teacher.
Yeah.
Your brothers and your sisters were teachers.
Exactly.
Why didn't you become a teacher?
Because I failed the teacher's exam. Listen, I think the two important things in life are to find the right partner to share your life with, and two, to find out what you really want to do. I know a lot of people who ulcers and business and fortunes and money and material things, and inside they're sick, they're dying, they're in anguish because they think, I'm not going to get a second shot at what I really want to do. I like people who are lawyers for 30 years and suddenly say, I think I'll be an actor. I think it's easy, and then make a stab at it. I don't know what else I could do or what else I would like to do. I do remember once in the Army, I spent 5 years as a medical soldier in hospitals, and then I became an officer in hospitals. And when I came back into civilian life, I couldn't get a job as an actor. And lying in bed with Ann one night, I sat up and I said, damn it, I have a civilian skill. I could be a registrar in a hospital. I could make $20,000 a year. I could take care of patients. And Ann sat up and she said, I'll be a nurse. I said, no, I'll stay in the theater.
Oh, okay, but whatever it is, it's interesting when you just said find the right mate in life, and obviously you did, and whatever you were going to do, she was going to be by your side. We have to take a break because I want to talk about the very special relationship the two of you have and how it started.
Okay.
We're speaking with Eli Wallach here in his apartment in New York, and we'll be right back after these messages. I'm Arlene Herson. My guest is Eli Wallach. We're here in New York in his apartment, and we were just looking at a picture of you and Ann Jackson. When you long time ago, when you met, I mean, you've been married for more than 40 years. Tell us about the meeting. Tell us about how you felt when you met her.
Well, when I first saw Ann, she was 19 and had long red hair. I thought she was wealthy. And we met at an audition for a one-act play by Tennessee Williams called This Property is Condemned. I was still in uniform. I'd just been discharged from the Army. And I had all my, what they call fruit salad and all this stuff. And we were going to do this play. I was going to play a young boy. And she thought, well, he's too old. But finally we did the play. And I got very involved. I'd been involved with a nurse for a number of years in the Army. But I decided, no, I'll stay out of the profession now and just concentrate on this actress. And we did, and we began to act together. We got a job. One of the first jobs I went to audition for was in the American Repertory Theater. And I asked Ann, would she please just feed me the lines? And she got on stage with me, and I had the long emotional speeches, and she'd say, yes, mio, no, mio. When it was over, they thanked me and they offered her a 2-year contract. So she said, what'll I do? I said, take it. I mean, then I went off to Washington to do a play, but there was an opening in the theater and I joined the theater. So we were together for a year on Broadway doing repertory. That's ancient history.
Okay, ancient, but you've done so much together. But together, there was a story, as a matter of fact, when you were first together, when you and Anne you weren't married yet. You were in her apartment, and there was one day in her $35 apartment down in the village, knock on the door, it's her father. Now, can you recall?
I'll tell you something. Actors have certain things they store in their memory when they need it for certain roles. If I have to be terrified in a movie, I just recall that incident, that moment. Today, it's nothing. I mean, if our children grow up, or they have relationships, and they live with people, or they don't live with people, it's quite different.
Okay, but I understand that you actually jumped out the window.
I had to jump out the window. It was on the first floor. I jumped out the window. It was snowing. I ran, and I'll never forget it. Never. And evidently, I was combing my hair. I was running. It was terrifying.
Well, you know, the world is so different now. I mean, it really is a kind of, you were way ahead of your time.
Yeah.
Okay, so you would terrify them. But there are times when you're working together, you and Anne, that you're angry at each other, and you have to be wonderful together on the stage. I have a picture of the two of you. I have a picture of you actually strangling your wife.
Oh.
Okay, tell us about that.
Oh, I'm playing a general in that play, an old retired general, and she's my wife who's bedridden. At the beginning of the play, I come on stage alone, and you hear her say to me, "Leon," I say, "Yes." She said, "What are you doing?" I said, I'm writing." She said, "Liar, you're thinking about young girls and how you want to touch them. That's what you." I said, No. She said, "What's going on in your head? I've got to get inside your head." And I said, "Madam, my head is out of bounds." And I think one of the magical things about this play is that he's investigated the difficulties of a relationship. In that play, the end of the act, I choke her. I'm so furious because she says, "I own you. You belong to me. You're my garbage bin." And I start to choke her, and as I do, the curtain comes down. Well, the usher came back and said, a couple going up the aisle, the wife said to the husband, "Do you think he killed her?" And the husband said, "I hope so." Now, the thing about us doing plays together is that it saves psychiatry bills. Neither one of us have been analyzed. We find plays that have tremendous fights in them. Next season, we're going to do a play called Sparky and the Fitz, about an old couple who fight all the time. And we love it because everything that we've deposited in angst and anger will come out in the work. And that's it. And we get our release when the audience loves it.
Well, that's interesting. So you don't fight in real life. So
we do fight. We do fight in real life, but we save it.
You just did. You save it to let it out on the stage.
Yeah.
Okay. Gee, wish we could all do that. Have an outlet for it. You just finished a play in Chicago with Anne, Love Letters.
Yes.
In real life, do you write love letters to each other?
We do write. I do write a lot. We write a lot to one another. I don't like telephoning. Especially in love letters, there's a whole thing about putting it down on paper, sharing a part of me with you. He says, a telephone call is dead the minute you hang up, whereas a letter, there's a residual value to a letter. And that's what we did write a lot to one another.
Well, because there seems to be, you're so proud of each other, you know, and you work so well together on stage as well. So when I've been speaking to Anne and you haven't been there, she speaks about you. When I speak to you and Anne isn't there, you speak about her with such pride in each other. Are you ever competitive with each other?
Well, she always says, I think I'm better than she is as an actor. And I say, no, I'm going to give you an article sometime called After the Kiss, because we will have on the road rehearsing a play called Twice Around the Park, and we're having these terrible fights. And Anne, poor Anne, was surrounded by all men, the author, the director, the two stage managers, and me. And she gets paranoid about, she's only feeding us, she's feeding a male world, and so on. And I got furious. I walked out, I kicked the door in. We were rehearsing in some church in Delaware. But I came back in, we went through the rehearsal, we finished. At the end of each performance in that play, we kiss, which was our way of saying, okay, it's all made up, don't worry about it. Telling the audience not to worry about it. will exist off the stage as well as on.
You will, and actually I read that article, and it talks about how Anne is torn, where she wants to be the supportive wife for you, yet in time she needs to be the actress,
Yeah.
and how it intertwines.
Well, you remember Joanne Woodward once did a movie where she was 6 different people. She was a courtesan, she was a secretary, she was this, she was that. Well, Anne has to juggle her life with all these things. However, I'm a father, I'm a husband, I'm an actor, I'm an accountant, I'm a, you know, a chauffeur. I'm all of these characters too. So she's not the only one who's suffering.
That's true. Okay, you're not suffering. Actually, it seems as if it's a really good life. We're going to take a break, and we're going to talk about some more of the things that Eli Wallach is into. We're speaking with Eli Wallach. We'll be right back after these messages. I'm Arlene Herson, and we're with Eli Wallach here in his apartment in New York, which is such a special place for me to be, by the way, and because you are such a special person. But also, you have, I mean, in addition to all that you do, and we talked before the break of being a father and an actor and a chauffeur and a teacher also, which you forgot, you also collect clocks. You have hundreds of clocks. Why clocks?
I don't know. Who was it said, time is of the essence? You know, clocks, the whole horology is a study of time, starting with sand, and going up. So people keeping track of time. Today with the quartz things, you can buy a watch for $10 now. You can throw them away because somebody figured out that quartz vibrates and therefore you can keep time. But I collect clocks. I don't know why, and I only specify certain ones. I don't have wall clocks or grandfather clocks. I collect desk, bedside, and travel clocks, and those are the kind I like. My wife has no concept of time. I have. We end our evening where we do a poem by Ogden Nash. We say, we don't have to leave yet, do we? Or yes, we do. And it ends with, some people like to rush, some people like to tarry. The problem is each other is what they always marry. And that's the way our life goes.
Okay, that's it. But don't you drive each other crazy? I mean, you want to be on time. Anne doesn't have any concept of time. If you have to be someplace, who wins out?
Well, sometimes I'm in such a rush, we go to the wrong address. And I've had to go to cocktail parties where we weren't even invited because of me. But Groucho Marx once wrote a book, and on the flyleaf he said, this book was written while I was waiting for my wife to get dressed. Now, I know that when we go out for the evening, I have to wait because Anne forgets twice. She has to go out the door and say, my glasses, go back in, or come out, my lipstick, in and out. So she has to do it twice. And that's why I collect clocks.
Okay, so the clocks will keep you on time, but are you patient when that happens? Are you a patient
Yes, I've
person?
grown to be patient. I've grown. I've finally understood I must see her point of view.
That's it. Okay, now in addition to your clocks, and that's very nice, and it's kind of a, but you also take pictures. You're also a wonderful photographer.
Yeah, I love to do photography. I don't mean a prying photography, but I like to find things that happen that my eye sees that others don't see. Years and years ago, I did a television show called The Margaret Bourke-White Story. Margaret Bourke-White was a great photographer. She did the first cover of Life magazine, but she developed Parkinson's disease and couldn't hold a camera, but she was a brilliant photographer. So I played Eisenstadt, who's also a great photographer, and they sent me to Leica school, and I learned how to use the Leica, and I began to see that pictures are not just people posing, but pictures are insights, discovery, and that's what I like about photography.
Yeah, and you have a lot of insight into to people. You've passed it on to your children. You have 3 children, 3 exceptional children. 2 daughters going into acting.
Yep.
Son, who is an artist and a filmmaker.
Yep.
There are, I mean, obviously, what was it you, did you encourage them in the beginning to?
Well, when I call my son's place, he's got a loft downtown, and they say Peter Wallach Enterprises, and I think, oh my God, my son is enterprising, but he also he's got a whole firm with a lot of people working for him. The two girls, one is living in California. She and I and Anne are going to do a play this winter. And then the other girl, the younger one, Catherine, is the representative for an eyeglass company, speaks fluent Italian, just came back from Italy, and is going to do a movie with us in Virginia in the dead of winter about an old couple getting lost in Virginia. And then, yes, we're very happy with the fact that the children, they often ask us, did you encourage your children to go into the theater? And people ask it as though, would you push your child off a cliff? And I think, well, each child, each person has to make their own trip through life. If that's what they choose to do, they should understand the anguish and the pain of show business. And when they're rejected, Anne says, why do we live through it twice? Because when they're turned down, the pain for us is very deep.
True. Okay, you know, there is a lot of anguish and pain. It's a tough business, but it seemed to have been easy for you. You seem to have gotten work from the beginning. It seemed to have not so.
Yeah, no actor is very satisfied. He's always thinking, I don't want to dwell on the past. I don't want to think about old movies and old plays. I want to know what's lying ahead, what comes up next. That's what excites me.
Okay, I have a quote from 20 years ago. So this is the past, but I wonder if it feels today. So I want to read it because I want it exactly. Acting is the most delicious experience in life. When I'm supposed to be feeling despair on the stage, what I really feel is that I'm sitting on top of the world.
Well, yes, I tell you, I was just reading last night a play in which I committed suicide. It's an old play, it's never been done again. It's a beautiful play by a great writer named Sam Berman. But I studied suicides, you know, and the different approaches to suicides. The actor gets pushed into a medium. I played doctors. I played lawyers. In the movie I said, as a lawyer, no more questions. Then I said to the director, why did I say that? He said, we've only got 3 weeks on this movie. Don't ask so many questions, just do it.
Okay, you know what they've just told me? They have just said no more questions because we're out of time. So, will you come back next week? And can we talk about some of your wonderful films so we can continue part 2 with Eli
All right,
Wallach?
I'll tell you about some of the films.
Ah, okay. We're speaking with Eli Wallach, who will be back with us again next week. So please, we'll be here, you be here, and I hope to see you then. Good night.